We weren't supposed to live through going to prison for a crime of rape. That's the worst crime you can go to prison for. But then when we got released, we weren't supposed to survive socially. We were supposed to have a social death, so that every single door of success will be closed in our faces. And the fact that we are here in front of you today with America's #1 documentarian. I mean, Korey says it all the time. This is a blessing in disguise. This is, the angels were sent from above.
Yes, sir.
And when I tell you that when you look at this number 13, we look at it in such a different light now. 13 is supposed to be an unlucky number. Most buildings don't have a 13th floor. But here, 13 years later, the truth came out. But the travesty is that this justice that we were looking for is still continuing to be delayed. And as you all know, justice delayed is justice denied.
Yes, sir.
Korey, could you talk about, they showed a lot of your confession inside this documentary. Do you look at that and wish you would have done anything differently or handled it a different way?
I'm just proud to be in the right place at the wrong time for this here moment. Get my life back. And I would say to New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, thank y'all for coming out this evening. And y'all heard it up there. I'm gonna give it to y'all some more. You know better than that. No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
What do we want?
Justice.
What do we want?
Justice.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
When do we want it?
Now.
When do we want it?
Now.
I'm just thankful for that.
Raymond, what about you? I mean, when you look back at the confessions, I mean, do you wish you hadn't done that, and do you think things would have turned out differently if you had stood your ground?
First off, you look at the dynamics of the whole situation. There was no standing our ground. We were 14 years old, 15 years old. Yes. Korey was 16. This wasn't a situation that you could say, if I can look back, would I have done it differently? We were naive. We were young. We never had any dealings with the system, any dealings with police. And this is what happens. We are the example of, when you just have a kid who's going to school and he's trying to do the right thing and he's trying to learn himself in life. And he come across seasoned veterans. This was a sex crime. And you had the homicide detective, who was the elite of the police force that was involved in this investigation. And when you look at that and then you throw in no food, no drink, no water, no sleep, and you add pressure, I mean, it's surprising that some of our interrogations lasted longer than 15 hours or 24 hours. And so, we look back at those. I can't watch the interrogation. I can't watch the confession because it always opens up that scar that Yusef always talks about, of what happened to us. But the only thing we can do is try to move forward from it, and we learn from it. And this is why we're able to sit here in front of you guys today. Also, you guys help us with the healing process. The clap, the response, the hugs, the I'm sorries, all that is very, very important to us. And it affects us a great deal. It gives us a chance to hold our head up and walk and put one foot in front of the other. Even though the system still, doesn't want to acknowledge and give us that justice that we received.
And Nathalie, you were one of the journalists that covered this case. And, you really stood out to me because I'm a reporter now at the New York Daily News, so I think about what you must have been going through and what you had to do to cover that. And I think about myself as a journalist and how, oftentimes I'm put in the same positions to go out and report these stories and do it in a way that the editors, dictate pretty much, this is the story, this is the way it is. What was your role in covering this, and how did you handle covering the Central Park 5 case?
My role at the time was to primarily focus on the hospital and what was going on with the jogger at the hospital. So I didn't have, at the time of the coverage, I didn't have immediate contact with the police as far as the case was concerned. And as time went on, I was asked to cover some of the reactions in the city. But one of the things that I think stands out to me is the fact that I was sent to the hospital and covered the hospital like a beat for 2 months. So who devotes those kinds of resources to the coverage of a rape, where a staff person is basically assigned to one site, one spot, one rape? And there were more than 3,200 rapes in the city that year. So why this rape and why this way? So the thing that I think about most when I look back on it is the fact that I think black journalists have a really, really special responsibility as journalists. It's almost a unique responsibility, because the narrative that drives a lot of the stories in the paper when they include blacks as the subject is a narrative that is destined to subordinate blacks or to render blacks in some negative light. So we have a particularly special responsibility when we're doing our jobs. And I think at the time, one, I was very young, but also two, when you're caught in the middle of a story, and the journalists in here know this, you're caught in that moment of, I'm going to get this piece of information and that piece of information for the story. And the lens, the long lens that I think journalists, black journalists, need to have is something that I can't emphasize enough. We need to always, with our stories, have a really long lens of history. Because in this particular context, I didn't know it then, I know it now, that most false confessions are around cases of rape. They're around cases of interracial rapes, and they're usually with young suspects. So these are the kinds of things, these are the kind of long lenses we need to apply to the stories we cover, because the relationship between the police and the press in this case was never questioned. And obviously, it was a disaster. It has been a disastrous relationship historically.